was it like for Israelites living in Jerusalem during the reign of King David? Nobody can say for sure these days, but we can make some guesses. So this is my fictional story of an Israelite family in Jerusalem in ancient times. Now the Bible says that King David captured the city of Jerusalem from the Canaanite tribe of the Jebusites, and that this city became the city of David, Jerusalem. When King David declared that he would rule all of Israel from this place, many Israelites may have decided to come and live in Jerusalem. The Israelites who came to Jerusalem, at least the first ones to come, probably wanted to get away from a bad situation and start over in a new place. People who enjoyed prosperity wouldn't want to leave that kind of life, right? So they probably didn't come to Jerusalem, at least not until later. The first Israelites who moved to David's city, they probably suffered some calamity, maybe a fire, a local famine or pestilence, or maybe it was just a guy, the youngest one in his family, who knew that he would always have to work for his older brothers, unless he could start his own business someplace else. For such a man as this, moving to King David's new capital would be a great opportunity. In this little story, we'll refer to this guy as A, since he represents the first generation who lived in Jerusalem. Let's say he was about 30 years old when he came, and his son, at 10 years old, we'll refer to him as B, since he represents the next generation. King David may have captured Jerusalem in the spring. We don't know that for certain, but springtime seems to be the best for military actions in the Middle East. Summer is just too hot, and winter is too wet. So if King David captured the Jebusite city in the spring, it's possible that an Israelite family could have made the move to Jerusalem in the summer during the wheat harvest. And making such a move so quickly would not fall beyond the realm of possibility. Now the people of Israel had known of King David for years. David had become a celebrity when he killed the Philistine giant Goliath with a rock and a sling. David married the daughter of King Saul, but then he fled from the king's court and became the leader of a renegade army. Perhaps A had known some people who had left to join King David's band of misfit warriors. After King Saul's death, David ruled the tribe of Judah and fought against the other tribes of Israel. This went on for about 7 years until the elders of Israel asked David to rule over them. Now it seems only natural that King David's first act as the king of all Israel would be to set up a new capital where the country could start over again. And it seems only natural for a man like A to look for a new start in the new capital near the charismatic young king, and to make that start as soon as he could. So let's say that A's family moved to the Mount of Olives, from where they could see everything that happened in David's city. And of course, A's family would have had to deal with the Jebusite neighbors. From the story in the Bible, it doesn't seem that King David either expelled or massacred the Jebusites. So it may have been that the new capital of Israel was filled with non-Israelites. We could make up a dozen little stories about A's family getting along with the Jebusite neighbors. Perhaps some Jebusites welcomed the newcomers. Perhaps some resented the foreign occupation of their ancient home. There are many avenues to explore, but we don't have time at the moment. Now, one of the problems of living on a hill like the Mount of Olives is getting supplies up from down below. And if we say that A's family started a little shop, a little place where people could buy groceries, they would have had a lot of supplies to haul up the hill. The first year probably would have been pretty rough for A's family, setting up the shop, attracting customers, paying for the initial cost of the supplies, and perhaps suffering attacks from angry neighbors. They probably would have suffered through the first winter in a leaky mud brick house. Maybe they took some charity from sympathetic neighbors. And perhaps by springtime, with the almond blossoms and the trees, perhaps things began to look up for A's family. And of course, that spring may have been the time that the Philistines came to attack. The Bible doesn't say when it was during the reign of King David that the Philistines attacked, only that they attacked. Now it stands to reason that the Philistines might challenge the new king in his new capital right away. Maybe during Passover that year, when Israelites gathered at the tabernacle, perhaps they felt some apprehension at the threat of a Philistine invasion. Would the new king be able to defend his territory? So it may have been in the spring of that year when King David's army gathered together and went out to face the enemy. A's family and their neighbors could only wait and watch for messengers with news. According to Bible scholars, the battle took place in the Bab el-Wad, which is Arabic, or the Valley of Rephaim, which is Hebrew. This is the same valley where the highway from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem runs today. Now we don't know how long A's family had to wait, but eventually news came back of a tremendous victory for King David's army. King David called the place Baal Perazim. Baal means Lord or boss, and Peretz is the Hebrew word for breaking out. Perazim is actually plural. So King David named the place of his victorious battle the place of the breakout. When the news came back to Jerusalem, the people most likely broke out in a wild celebration. It may have been a celebration that went long into the night, at least for the Israelites. Perhaps some of the Jebusites wanted to see the Philistines drive the Israelites away from their homeland. It's just one of those things that you just kind of wonder about what was really happening amongst the people. When the Israelites gathered at the tabernacle for the feast of Shavuot later that summer, they may have gathered in a mood of triumph and relief. But we don't know that for sure. We don't know the exact order of events. This is just guessing that the battle took place in the springtime. It might not have happened that way. In the fall of that year, A's family would have watched and perhaps participated in the olive harvest. Perhaps there were olive groves all around them on the Mount of Olives, stands to reason. When the farmers harvested the olives from the trees, the men would go out with sticks and knock the olives to the ground, and the young boys would climb up into the branches and up to the very tops and knock down the olives that the farmers couldn't reach with their sticks. Perhaps this was the year that young B joined the boys in the trees and fell out of the tree down to the ground and broke his arm. Poor kid. When the rains came along that year, I'd like to think that A's family had done well and that they were able to get through this winter better than they had in the previous year. And perhaps it was in the following spring that the Philistines came back. The Bible only says that King David fought 2 battles against the Philistines. It doesn't say how long between battles. Maybe it was years between. Maybe both battles fought in the same year, or it may have been in succeeding years. Perhaps A's family felt the same anxiety as they watched King David's army march out again. Or maybe this time they felt that Israel could win once again. After another time of watching and waiting, the news came back again, and it was victory once again. This time, King David's warriors chased the Philistines almost down to the coast, down to Gaza and Gezer. It was a mighty victory for the Israelites. The Bible doesn't record that King David ever had problems with the Philistines again. Perhaps some of the Jebusites felt disappointment that the Philistines failed to dislodge the Israelites from their ancient capital. But by this time, King David was established in Jerusalem. Although most people probably called it David's city rather than Jerusalem. And we might say that A's family and their little shop was well established on the Mount of Olives.